Did you know a leaky septic tank could be poisoning your water, making you sick, and damaging your home without even you realizing it? This week, I'm going to sit down with Shane Broyhill from Broyhill Environmentals, and we're going to uncover all the hidden dangers of a septic tank and how to care for one properly. So we are here today with Shane Broyhill from Broyhill Environmental. Shane, thanks so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it. We are going to talk all about septic systems, which is such a fun, exciting, and confusing topic for a lot of folks. I'm Carrie with Carrie Carrico Real Estate, and again, we're going to talk about all about septic tanks. So Shane, how did you get into the septic world?
So I was about 15 when my uncle bought his first pump truck.
Oh, wow.
And so
Yeah.
make a little money on the side every
Yeah.
once, jump in the truck and you go help him dig a couple holes, drag a couple hoses. And
Mhm.
I mean, for a kid who, your other alternative is getting minimum wage bagging groceries.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, at least I get out and it's hard labor, but you're like, I'm outside, I'm not stuck doing the same thing all day.
Yeah.
And so kind of just work with him during the summers and things like that. And
Yeah.
then it's a good gig when you come home from college or home from, like, in the summer or the winter, stuff like that. And
Yeah.
then it just kind of becomes the thing that you know and that you're good at. And life takes you in certain directions, and the next thing you know, you own a company, and that's what you do for a living.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And you were so good at your job. We rely on you heavily, and all your knowledge because you're so knowledgeable. I mean, like the deal we've been doing just recently, it's been odd. You show up and you think there's one septic tank, but there's actually two, which is so incredibly interesting. And how that happens. And nobody, like the county, doesn't know about it, which is so crazy. But I guess we'll just kind of jump right in and can you like explain? Because I actually have people ask me these questions, especially first-time home buyers, and also people from the West Coast and just different areas of the country. Can you explain how a septic like system actually works for people that maybe are not familiar with it or like a first-time home buyer?
Yeah, and not to dumb it down too much, but
Yeah.
I'm avoid a lot of the jargon that we
Yeah.
use. So when you flush toilet, run a sink, shower,
Yeah.
anything that uses water, it should all come into one pipe that comes out of your house. And that pipe goes into a septic tank.
Yeah.
And it is a large concrete box that holds everything that comes out of the house.
Uh-huh.
And it holds it there for a multitude of purposes. For one, it just needs to hold it. But
Hmm.
there's different bacteriological processes that happen, and it holds it until you get to a certain point, usually around 1,000 gallons, where one flush in equals basically the same amount going out.
Hmm.
And that water then goes out to a drain field,
Hmm.
also called a dispersal field, a leach field. There's tons of different names that people use for it.
Yeah.
But the purpose is to take that water out of the septic tank and to let it go out into the ground and let nature do its work. It will percolate down through the soil, which cleans it of different viruses, bacteria, different things that can be really harmful to humans and the environment.
Yeah.
And eventually that all will wind up back into the groundwater. I was
Okay.
telling you the other day, I was like, eventually, if you're on septic and well,
Hmm.
like, that flush that you did will
Yeah.
eventually be the same water kind of that comes up out of the well.
Oh.
But
Hmm.
It's clean at that
Yeah.
point. That's what nature is designed to do.
Yeah.
So our purpose in septic is to make sure that you take everything out of the house, clean it up as best you can to make it kind of go away and become clean drinking water again.
Yeah. Yeah. And no one's ever explained it to me like that. That's so interesting. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, it's really interesting. And I didn't think about it until you explained it like that. So that's a really good way to explain to like a client, a buyer or a seller, why it's so important to take care of it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because that's the biggest hurdle. What are like the main components that people just kind of need to know about or just like be familiar with? Somebody, because like I said, I've explained a lot of people that have been nervous about a septic tank or maybe lived in a different part of the country where there's not a lot of them. They've asked me different questions about them. But what are the main components that somebody should kind of know about?
So the septic tank that I just spoke about,
Mhm.
that's key.
Yeah.
Every septic system has to have a septic tank.
Yes.
And like I said, basically it holds things before you can move on to the drain field or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and what you want leaving that septic tank is just water.
Hmm.
So the septic tank holds water, but it's a lot of solids
Yeah.
that can either kind of settle up top, settle on bottom, things like that. That's where pumping becomes important.
Yeah.
But everybody has a septic tank. Past that, it can get more complicated.
Hmm.
Um, but generally, you're looking at what we call a gravity fed system where it's just water flowing
Hmm.
off into the drain field. Gravity does all the work.
Okay.
Um, there are some that you have to utilize an elevated portion of the yard to
Yeah.
find the soil. And that's when a pump tank becomes important.
Hmm.
Also, just a large concrete box, but it's got a lot more bells and whistles on it.
Yeah.
The pump, floats, things like that, that can help, get water to move up to that elevated portion of the yard.
Yeah.
Um, there's the drain field, and that's where more interaction with the soil takes away some of those bacteria, the viruses, things like that.
Yeah.
A lot of different processes. And that can look different. Back in the day, it was always gravel. Gravel was king. Whether you're talking big gravel pits or individual gravel lines,
Yeah.
that's all we ever used.
Hmm.
Now we have our chambers, we have panel block systems. I mean, there are tons of things that we can do to help introduce that septic effluent, and that we call it, the water leaving the tank,
Yeah.
into the soil in a way that's going to suit that particular system best. But typically, it's just your septic tank, a drain field,
Hmm.
and if you're so lucky, you might have a few things in between those that are going to help the system operate appropriately.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's interesting. So this is a question like typically as selling real estate, we typically look up and see whether the house is on septic or city. But for folks that maybe are just kind of curious, is there any way that they can tell if the house has a septic or it's on city water just by looking at it or the location? Or I mean, what do you know about that? Because I mean, we do all the research typically, but for somebody that just is out looking around or, maybe just wants to know how they can tell on their own.
So location is a good indicator.
Yeah.
Um, if you're in the middle of any downtown
Yeah.
city,
Yeah.
that's um, if the closest neighbor isn't for miles, you're probably on septic.
Yeah.
Um, but obviously there's a gray area in between, and those can get tricky. I have done plenty of inspections where someone said, "We're on septic." No, you're on sewer. Or
Yeah.
people, I thought I was on city. I'm actually on septic.
Yeah.
So it can be difficult. People are like, I get this bill from the city, and I'm like, I get there and I'm like, okay, it's just for water. It will
Yeah.
also say sewer if you're on sewer. Um, or people have said they've been paying their sewer bill, and I find a septic tank that's still hooked up to the house. So it can be difficult. And
Yeah.
most, especially some older systems, all of this is buried.
Hmm.
So just looking out, I may see something just from my years in the industry that I
Yeah.
could probably tell,
Hmm.
but normal people don't.
Yeah.
And it's a reason why a lot of people forget that it's there, and it's
Hmm.
not something I want to just forget about.
Yeah.
But looking up, old utility records may tell you if somebody's paid for sewer once before, chances are it's probably on still on city sewer.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Contacting the local health department, that particular county,
Hmm.
and just asking, do you have anything on file for this? And seeing if they do or not.
Yeah.
Um, those are some good starting points to see, what am I dealing with when I flush my toilet?
Yeah, yeah, those are really good points because I mean sometimes the county won't know. Like I've worked with many houses that, well, 500 houses around the house is all on city, and the county does not have a permit. And the last five agents all thought it was city, and it was not. It was sewer. So that happens.
Mm.
Not often, but it does happen. So I get that completely. Yeah, and it sucks when that happens. Um, really bad. But you live and you learn and you check all the water bills after that, for sure. Well, okay, so let's move on to maintenance and care of septics. That's like one of the biggest questions I have, especially that are when people are new to owning a septic system at their house. What are key steps homeowners should take into consideration to maintain a septic system the best, possible way?
So first and foremost, I don't care how old that septic tank is
Yeah.
uh, installed. You have to pump your septic tank.
Yeah.
And I've been out places and they call you for a reason, and their
Yeah.
system is. They're like, "Well, I never had to do anything in 40 years." I'm like, "That's why I'm here today because
Yeah.
you did anything."
Yeah.
Um, and I'm like, the money that you saved over the years not pumping your septic tank, you're going to pay me 5 times that much minimum to put a new system in.
Yeah.
Uh, because in that concrete box, the solids accumulate. The
Yeah.
water will continuously pass through as it's designed to do,
Yeah.
but it does build up over time.
Yeah.
And it builds up over time. Eventually, it makes its way out to the drain field, and then it shuts your drain field down.
Yeah.
So we tell people you have to get your septic tank pumped.
Yeah.
Um, I did write down some notes I found from an old article.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and I pulled this from Davidson County
Oh, cool.
permits.
Cool.
Um, so 1,000 gallons is going to be the typical size for
Yeah.
most houses. And
Hmm.
if you have 2 people, they say you can go around 6 years. I would probably say 5.
Uh-huh.
If you have 4 people, they say 3 years. 6 people, 2. 8 people, 1.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Uh-huh.
Really, the more people you have in your house,
Hmm.
clearly the more you're putting in, the more frequently you should get it pumped out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I love that you found those notes because I mean, we always know the 2 to 5 years rule or every, couple of years, but I've always wondered, like, I wonder how often you should actually pump it if you have way more people in the house. Because I mean, I've seen, helping buyers buy homes that there's just been too many people in the home. What's happened to the septic tank? So I know more often, but how much, and that kind of thing for sure. So I appreciate you looking up and giving us those, stats there. Are there any specific products that you recommend or advise again, that people should be using with a septic or not? Because that's always like a question.
So everybody has their opinion on it.
Yeah.
I don't ever promote any products. I'm not saying that there's not certain things out there that might be beneficial here or there in special circumstances.
Yeah.
Um, but a septic system is designed to work all on its own.
Yeah.
If it needed anything more, then your local health department would let you know that
Yeah.
those things are required. Um, there's times where, in a highly vegetative area, you have to
Hmm.
worry about roots growing into the system. So copper sulfate or some kind of alternative, like your root X or something like that,
Hmm.
could potentially be beneficial.
Okay.
Control that kind of the root growth in different components.
Yeah.
Uh, but anything else out there, I tell people it's your system. If it helps you sleep better at night, then
Yeah.
you can go for it.
Yeah.
Rid-X, for example, I know a lot of people like to use that,
Hmm.
but they there's certain things about it that I'm not completely sold on.
Hmm.
But other than that, generally I just say get your tank pumped every 3 to 5 years, or
Yeah.
you know, more often if you have more people,
Yeah.
that kind of.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
other than
Yeah.
good.
So is there any like products you should put down it? Like because you always see in the stores like Septic-Safe. Is that legit? Or can you use any kind of toilet paper or whatever? Like, what should you not put down a septic, or use in your house? Because I know that's a little bit different, isn't it?
Yeah, there's some that work better than others.
Uh-huh.
So if you wanted to really be awesome at maintaining your septic system,
Yeah.
it's something nobody ever wants to use, like single ply is probably the best,
Yeah.
but don't do that.
Yeah.
Like, um, I put it this way. If you think it wouldn't break down well in a septic tank, it probably doesn't.
Yeah.
Um, so if it's, 8 ply super quilted,
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to take a lot longer than your 2 ply or something like that.
Yeah. It's expensive too. The eight.
Right.
Yeah.
And your wipes and things like that, they're never going to break down as
Yeah.
highly as that can be.
Yeah.
Um, but I tell people you should be comfortable, and I tell people that never put your wipes down the toilet.
Yeah.
And I have people tell me there is no way I can convince my spouse not to do that, and I'm like, then you just need to get your tank pumped every so
Yeah.
often, more
Yeah.
frequent,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
abide by the rules.
Yeah.
Uh, and people need to know that if your local pumper that you use knows that you're a habitual like wipe user,
Yeah.
you could potentially incur extra fees during your pumping because you don't know how hard that is to pump out,
Yeah.
and that can cause clogs at the truck and the dump site, things of that nature. And sometimes you pay extra for the headache that you're putting on your pumper.
Yeah.
Um, I've definitely heard of people charging extra for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Best thing is to not do it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, even with city sewer, like we tell everyone just in general because it is so rough on the system, on the sewer system, and just your plumbing in your own house. Don't put wipes down, you know,
Abs-
down the toilet. Like we have a rental house, and I knew that the people that owned it prior, they had babies and they probably put the wipes down so we've been struggling the past couple of years. And it's one of those things, even though it's on city, I'm like, I'm gonna probably have to get that pumped eventually, just because they're so rough on any system. The wipes are. I think yeah, they're just something that people need to not put down any toilet or
yeah, I know
any
the
system.
package is flushable,
Yeah,
and that's clever because they flush.
yeah, 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 for sure. Yeah,
It's not something you should put in your septic system or probably flush down the toilet, period,
yeah,
regardless of your sewer.
yeah.
Um,
For sure. Yeah, definitely. So we already talked about roots. So you definitely need to watch out if you're in a wooded area or there's a lot of tree roots for sure. So we kind of went over that already, but I have one other question for you. So I was told by another seller of mine a couple like years back that the products, when somebody has cancer or an illness, will actually destroy the leach bed. Is this true?
So anytime, and usually I have this conversation if people are like, we're going to be moving my elderly
Yeah.
whoever.
Yeah.
Okay, just know for one, it's never recommended to flush old pills of any kind,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
um, if you're on certain medications,
Hmm.
all of that is taken up by that person's system and it will be excreted. And so that can go off into your system.
Yeah.
And the bacteria in the septic tank or the bacteria that's actually found out in the soil of the leach field,
Hmm.
they can be susceptible to that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, like we tell people, don't don't pour a bunch of like bleach down your drain and things like that. That can harm the bacteria. Same thing for these medications
Yeah.
that it can alter the biology in your septic system,
Hmm.
plays a part into the performance of how well it functions.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Okay. So, okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. And that's just like an interesting topic and something that a lot of people don't even think about. And so definitely I actually bring it up now just because it's a thing. With all the chemo and the cancer medications. I mean, it definitely can, like, that's what I had thought. So I wanted to make sure I was right on that question. Um, so any do's and don'ts with septic? We've kind of talked about that already with the wipes. Anything else other than the wipes and like pouring bleach down the system that you feel like are like a big deal?
yeah, tampons, pads.
Yeah.
Um, I ran into one the other day. They were flushing candy wrappers. That's clearly a no. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Um, prophylactics. I mean, once
Yeah.
again, it's all like if you think about it with some common sense, if it's tightly woven together or made out of plastic or whatever, like it's not going to break down in that septic
No.
tank.
Yeah.
Um, also heard, don't pour old milk down
Mm.
the
Yeah.
drain because it's a colloid, and it
Mm.
can potentially kind of continue on with the water and make its way out and it can settle.
I didn't know about that. Yeah. That's
So
interesting.
grease.
Yeah.
So, especially if you live out in the country sometimes, like you love to use bacon grease for everything.
Yeah.
Take the time, pour that somewhere else besides down your drain. Let it solidify, wipe it out. Everything you can do to keep grease and things like that out
Yeah.
of the um, these things will tend to float on top. The layer we call fog, fats,
Yeah.
oils, and
Hmm.
greases,
That makes sense. Yeah.
which Rid-X does break down. And if it
Hmm.
breaks down, it can get into the water and make its way out. So
Hmm.
that's kind of my interesting relationship with Rid-X.
Yeah.
Um, but trying to keep everything out of the septic system that you can.
Yeah.
Um, there's some things that are, unavoidable. Like I'm not telling people you can't pour any bleach down. In a perfect world, sure,
Yeah.
but we don't live in a perfect world, and a little bit of something here or there isn't going to kill your system.
Yeah.
Um, but I've heard people they're like, "Oh, don't use antibacterial soap." I'm like, "Don't dump buckets of it down your drain.
Yeah.
You can wash your hands."
Yeah.
Um, I think people tend to be afraid that like you're going to do one thing on one day and you're going to break your system. I was like, these things are fairly resilient. I
Yeah.
mean, sometimes it takes 70 years for a septic system to go bad.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Yeah.
so you should, you know, be mindful of what's buried out there in your backyard, but it's
Mhm.
just good practices. Getting your septic tank pumped every 3 to 5 years or
Yeah.
more often for most people.
Yeah.
Nowadays, there's filters in there
Yeah.
that try to keep as much solids in the tank and not out in your drain field. That filter is designed to clog up. It means it's doing its job.
Yeah.
Call a professional. sometimes people need it every year. If there's more people who are using more toilet paper and things,
Yeah.
it could be frequently than that.
Yeah.
So knowing exactly what system you have, because as we have come through the years, we make advances and there's different things. Some tanks have a baffle wall, some don't. Some
Mhm.
have that feature, some don't. So
Yeah.
knowing exactly what you have will help you to know exactly what kind of maintenance is necessary.
Hmm.
Um, and kind of respecting, what lurks beneath a little bit. But it's not something that buyers should be scared of.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Um,
You maintain it, it'll be okay. Yeah.
yeah, like I said, it kind of just works on its own. You don't have to lie awake at night wondering, is the bacteria in my septic tank doing its job?
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of naturally, the way you explain it, it kind of makes all the sense. And I'm like, oh, that is like one of the best ways to explain it because it kind of tells you, A, it's a lot more environmental than like I had thought, initially. And I was like, oh, that's pretty like the way you explained it. Yeah, definitely is makes a lot more sense that you shouldn't worry about it and just let, you know, nature take its course basically. Is it safe to have a garbage disposal with a septic?
It is acceptable.
Hmm.
It's never advised.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
extra strain on your system.
Hmm.
Um, they're not forbidden for a reason. You can
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
um, normally a larger size septic tank is going to be required. Like if you are building a house and you let them know, hey, I'm going to have a garbage disposal,
Yeah.
typically draw up a permit with a larger tank than what would typically be necessary for that house.
Yeah.
We say that, once again, it kind of goes back to if you're going to do certain things like that, then you might just need to get your tank pumped a little bit more often.
Yeah.
Um, but once again, they're not outlawed for septic systems, which if they were that harmful, then we wouldn't allow it.
Yeah.
Uh, so you can, is it the best idea? Probably not.
Yeah.
But once again, we're not asking you to use single ply toilet paper. We're not telling you you can't have a garbage disposal.
Yeah, for sure. So is there any issue if you have like excessive water usage with a septic? Because the way that the system works, is that a problem?
Yes.
It is.
Um,
Okay.
so every system is designed based on the number of bedrooms in the home.
Hmm. Yeah.
Septic math is one bedroom equals 120 gallons of water per day.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So if you have a two-bedroom home, 240 gallons of water, four bedrooms, 480.
Yeah.
So on. And the way they typically assume these numbers is if you have a two-bedroom home, that's good for four people because two people per bedroom.
Hmm.
And 60 gallons of water per person per day
Hmm.
seems reasonable enough. Um,
Yeah.
now, if you have a two-bedroom home with four people in it, everybody is taking an hour-long shower apiece, and everybody is doing a load of laundry, a day.
Hmm.
You can see where this, and it does, if it sounds
Yeah.
excessive, you
Yeah, that
probably.
makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. That would be a lot. So I can definitely see that. Like one house you helped me with, I think like I'm trying to think. We had to do a new system for it. And I think there was like 8 or 10 cats and dogs. And there was like, I think 12 people living in like a 3 or 4 bedroom house. That thing was a disaster, I remember you telling me. And so that was like, wow, that's bad. Yeah, it was like bursting. So I get that. Yeah, it's making
And,
more sense now.
I actually went to pump a realtor's house one time,
Uh-huh.
and it was full. I mean, it was packed full.
Oh wow.
And like, when was the last time you had this pump? She's like, last year. And I was like, what? I was like, there's no way. She's like, well, I have 10 people living here right now. I was like,
Wow.
oh. And
Yeah.
was also having problems with her drain field. I was like, yeah, I said this is all tied together. I was like, it is packed full because you have too many people. I was like,
Yeah.
Redrill is overwhelmed because it's getting too much water.
Yeah.
So, I don't think that people need to necessarily like put like gallon counters on all their fixtures so they know exactly how much they're using per day. Like the state, when they design these things, are not trying to like rule every time you wash your hands or something.
Yeah.
That's it's a pretty generous amount of water to use,
Yeah.
but it's not going to accommodate excessive
Yeah.
usage.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of times when we go to like any kind of like a newer system, and
Mhm.
newer is a relative term, like 90s to now, and
Yeah.
having drain field issues, and I don't see roots or anything that could be causing the problem.
Yeah.
First, like we look at the pipe coming from the house.
Hmm.
If nobody is there, nobody is supposed to be running water, and you see like a trickle or a stream, something is leaking in the home.
Yeah.
Um, most of the time, if it's a faucet, people notice that.
Yeah.
So 9 times out of 10, it's a toilet, and it has a hung flapper on it that will constantly let it run. And
Oh,
it is amazing how much water can be introduced to that system per day from one leaking toilet.
that's crazy. Yeah. I mean, like, I know it'll increase your bill, like, because I'm pretty, sensitive about that, but I didn't even think about that with a septic system. That would be, it could turn into excessive water issues, definitely.
Oh,
Or if you had two that were like that. So, yeah,
right.
I can definitely see that for sure. What should a homeowner do if there's like any weird, odor or drainage or anything? Is there anything that they should do or just call you?
Calming. Uh,
Okay.
it's probably the easiest way. There's some things that can, because if you call a plumber, they always blame us. Like they're like, oh,
Yeah.
it's set. And I'm like, it it's probably at operating level. And
Yeah.
most of the time that I've gone after a plumber, I'm like, we're not causing the backup in the house, but we're happy to pump it while we're here, kind of deal.
Yeah.
Um, there are random things that can cause odors.
Hmm.
Because you have vent pipes on the top of your house for a reason. It's
Yeah.
supposed to. If you live around a lot of large trees, you can get leaves that get down in there and can block that pipe off. So
Oh,
now the gases have to escape somewhere.
yeah.
Um, and we tell people if you have an area of your home, maybe a back bedroom, bathroom situation that doesn't get used all the time,
Uh-huh.
the P caps are supposed to hold some water there, and that's to prevent the gases from flowing back into the house.
Yeah.
Over time, if it's not used, those can dry out, and now the gas has another way of escaping into that bathroom, and so you can, you know, have a smell in a certain area of the house because those P
Yeah.
traps have.
That makes
A
sense. Yeah.
lot of times, it more than likely is going to be septic related,
Hmm.
and could be that the system, you've gone a while and it does need to be pumped out.
Yeah.
It could just be time. And I tell a
Yeah.
lot of people, how do I know, what this means or something?
Yeah.
If you get on a good maintenance schedule, a lot of times you're not going to be making emergency calls. You're not going to have these things happening because you take care of these things.
Yeah.
And I understand, once again, we don't live in a perfect world where everybody's going to
Yeah.
be right on the schedule.
Hmm.
And if you start to see things that are out of the norm, you probably should have called to have it
Yeah.
maintained. But your system lets you know when something's amiss, and at
Yeah.
that, yeah, absolutely call somebody and um, get them out there as quick as possible before a small problem turns into a big
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. And you can definitely like with septics, I feel like they can turn into such a big problem so quickly, for sure.
problem.
So like what if there's like a heavy rain or like we had last fall, like a hurricane? Does that affect the septic system at all? Because being that the way the water flows and the, just the way the whole system's set up. Can that affect it?
vastly.
Okay.
It can, and there are people that I know that in the winter,
Yeah.
when we don't have as much sunlight, we get more rain, things of this nature that tend to make the ground more saturated.
Yeah.
They're calling somebody to pump their septic tank every month.
Hmm.
And if you're that person, that is not okay.
Yeah.
Something's going on. Um, because I had a client ask me one time, they're like, is it okay to do a septic inspection after it rained or while it's raining or whatever?
Yeah.
And um, I had, the seller of the home disagreed with my statement that I said, yeah, we can. So I called one of our local boards of, you know, septic,
Yeah.
and I I asked her if that was okay, and she very bluntly stated to me, she said, "Do you like to use the bathroom when it rains?" I said, "Yes." And
Yeah.
she said, "There's your answer," and hung up the phone.
Yeah. That's
I
funny. Yep. Yep.
mean, it's true. Like it's designed to work.
Yeah.
And there are things that you can do as a homeowner. And it's something that we look at when we do inspections, like the grading of your yard.
Yes.
Um, it always says when we install systems, we cannot have like gutter spouts draining directly onto the septic tank or to directly onto the leach field.
Yeah.
The same, if you feel like your leach field kind of sits in a valley and water sits on it, there are going to be issues because that groundwater also does the same thing that the water coming from the septic tank does. It goes through the ground, and the ground can only absorb at a certain rate.
Yeah.
So you're putting extra stress on it. And when that water is sitting there in that area and has nowhere to go, it's going to find the path of least resistance. It's
Yeah.
either going to surface in the yard or it's going to back up into your house.
Yeah.
So yes, heavy rain can affect just about every system,
Yeah.
um, but there are ways to help prevent it from impacting it greatly.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And so in reference to buyers, the buyers are always like, do I need a septic inspection? And I'm like, yeah, you do. You definitely do. We need to make sure it's running correctly and the system's working correctly. What's your opinion on that? Because I mean, you do this for a living. How do you feel about that?
I have a lot of people who will call me and
Hmm.
they're like, I moved in X months ago. I'm
Yeah.
having a problem. And I ask them, did you have a septic inspection? No. And I hate seeing the sticker shock look on their face when we tell them what it's going to take to replace that septic system
Yeah.
because it's not hundreds of dollars, it's thousands of
Yeah.
dollars. And I hate to see people in that situation.
Yeah.
And, it gives me a sense of professional pride when I do an inspection for somebody, and maybe it's somebody who was kind of on the fence of getting one or not.
Yeah.
And we find all of these issues,
Yeah.
and, you know, they can address it at that point during the purchasing of the home
Yeah.
versus being stuck all on their own later and
Yeah.
have that taken care of. So, I mean, because I tell people, I was like, if you need, a system that's going to cost 15 to $20,000, I don't know many people that have that in their back pocket, just waiting to bury it in their backyard now.
Oh, yeah, I mean yeah, I mean it could break you financially. Yeah,
And
yeah. That's
it's
why
not something that
yeah,
you put off
yeah,
because using the restroom is pretty important to most people.
yeah,
And you don't want it coming up somewhere else in your house or sitting in your backyard every
yeah.
time. So, yeah, I mean, and it's an environmental hazard. And if it gets bad enough, it's not something that, because your neighbor's going to call
Oh
because
yeah.
your backyard smells.
Yep.
And the county will give you a certain amount of time to get it done, but it's pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually sold a house and it wasn't the house I was selling, but one of the neighbors, they had issues and my seller had to call. because of that exact same issue. And I think they gave him like 3 weeks to fix it or something. It wasn't very long. So I was shocked. It was years ago, but I was like, wow, I didn't know they were that serious about it. But I mean, but it makes sense because
It's all sewage
yeah, and it's
on the ground.
in the environment. Yeah, definitely makes sense for sure. I just have like one other question. Are there any like regulations or permits homeowners should be aware of when they're installing or repairing a septic system? This is always my number one question. Like, I'm going to build. What do I need to do? How does this happen? Um, where do they start?
So as as far as building a home, I'm sure there's
Yep,
hundreds.
millions things to do. Yeah.
For septic, we have a three-part process.
Hmm.
So you do have to submit an application,
Yep.
and it depends on what it is you're doing. Like a new build is a new construction.
Yeah.
If it's failing on your existing system, it's a
Mhm.
repair. Adding a bedroom, you
Yeah.
now need a larger system, so now that's an expansion application.
Yep.
Um, but regardless of what kind of application, the next part is the county comes out and does their assessment, and they will issue the improvement permit.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a brief overview of, okay, this is what we want you to install.
Hmm.
The next step is a construction authorization, gives us the authorization to construct a system.
Hmm.
Um, Generally, that has a little bit more detail in it.
Yeah.
Generally, it comes with a nice drawing of here is your house,
Yeah.
here's the septic tank, and then lines dictating where they want the drain field installed.
Yeah.
And then at that point, we come out, we do the installation. The county comes out, checks to make sure that we did everything right.
Yeah.
At that point, they will issue the operations permit.
Yeah.
At And that's the most important thing that we need when we come behind somebody and doing an inspection. What was actually installed and how was it installed? Because
Yeah.
every once in a while, we look at the construction authorization and we're trying to abide by it, but you're digging in the ground.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
unheard of to run into problems like, hey, there's a gigantic granite boulder that
Yeah.
nobody knows is there. So
Yes.
now you have to kind of go around or find somewhere else. And that's the difference that you see on the operations permit.
Yeah.
Okay. So instead of going straight, we diverted around it. Now this is what is actually there.
Yeah.
Um, so improvement permit, construction authorization, and operations permit.
Okay. I appreciate you bringing that up because that's another question that a lot of folks ask. And, just having the information out there where people can, watch this video and listen to I feel like it's really helpful for somebody that's, either never had a septic system or they're thinking about building, just, all this information that you've given us and kind of gone over all the details of a septic system, which some people don't think is that exciting. I do. I find it very interesting. It's such an interesting topic. It's such an interesting world. Um,
Yeah,
so
I think it depends on the person. If you want your septic system to be simple, it can be.
yeah,
Um, and if you want to learn more about it, there's tons of resources. The local health department. I mean, I love having clients who, move from an area and they may have barely ever heard of septic,
yeah,
and then asking, what do we do?
yeah,
Thank you for asking because it makes our job as providers easier when you do maintain it.
yeah, yeah,
As
definitely.
and it helps them as a homeowner because neglect costs money
Yes. Yeah,
a lot more than, you know, having it maintained on a regular basis.
yeah,
Um,
sure.
and obviously, it's something that I find interesting. It's what I do for a living.
Yeah,
Um, and, I'm always willing, like I just told a client today, I was like, I can do this thing. There's nothing saying that you can't. I
yeah,
understand it's messy. It's not something a lot of people want to do, but I have people all the time. They're like, "Can you show me the first time how to do this, and then I can do it afterwards?" Sure, if you want to maintain your system on your own, there's ways you can.
Yeah.
Most people aren't going to be able to pump their own septic tanks, but there's other things that you can do.
Yeah.
Um, and I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
Um, want nothing to do with it, that's also okay.
Yeah, that's
That's
me.
that's
Yeah.
what we're here for.
Yeah.
You know, that filter, call us to pump the septic tank.
Yeah.
If you don't know, you didn't have an inspection and you don't know where components are, please call us. We're very willing to come out and flag out components of this system
Yeah.
because so many times some I have seen giant tractors for agricultural use sitting in a septic tank because
Hmm.
they know where it was. And
Yes.
those things, they're made of concrete, they're not indestructible.
Yes. Yeah.
Don't,
Yeah.
if you don't know where something is and you're thinking of putting on an addition or, you know, a concrete patio,
Yeah.
I have been out where a person had just poured a concrete patio 2 weeks prior, and they're like, "Where's our septic tank?" And we are like, "Right beneath
Yeah.
this."
Or
And
put
you,
a hot tub on it. Remember the cement
yes,
pad with the hot tub? We're like,
yeah.
where? Oh my gosh, are you serious?
But I can see it being easy. It's buried. You look
Yeah.
out there, you can't see it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
before, I mean, it's like the 811 thing is like call before you dig. And it's the same thing. Before you start doing things in your yard and you're not aware of where these components are,
Yeah.
because you can crush tanks, you can crush drain lines, and
Yeah.
all of these things, once again, it's thousands of dollars. Call somebody that can find and locate these things, and then you know before you get into a situation
Yeah.
where these things are. And I'm just like, people are like, well, can I put this on top of it? No.
Yeah.
I will tell you no in a heartbeat. You don't
Yeah.
have to listen to me, but I'll let you know where these things are and what, we advise, what's maybe not advisable, but okay, and what, is perfectly fine.
Yeah. Yeah. My sister just got a septic for the first time and she always is asking me, and I'm like, no, you cannot put that there. No. So I just tell her no every single time. And she's like, really? I'm like, really? No, no, you can't put it there. So I get that completely. Well, Shane, I really, really appreciate you spending time with us and chatting with us for this long. I know you're super busy, and to take time out of your day, I really, really appreciate it again. And all the information you gave me, like, there are so many things because I kind of know a decent amount of septics, but I had no idea about a lot of what we talked about today. So I really appreciate it as well. And again, if anyone needs Shane's information, you can always DM me. I'll get you his info, but I'll have his info in the comments below. And it's Shane Broyhill with Broyhill Environmental LLC. Again, Shane, thank you so, so much for coming on. And we hope you come on again. We can talk about some other topic. Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you. It's been my pleasure.
No problem.